to another episode of the Realtist Report. I'm your host and Realtist member, Daryl Powell Lee. Today we have a very special guest. You got to say very twice because this individual deserves that and much more. Before I even give you his name, I'll give you his fame. Right, so 33 years of real estate professional experience. Past president, National Association of Real Estate Brokers, named by Realtor magazine as one of America's 25 most influential in the real estate industry. Developed and authored a national real estate owned REO specialist course for real estate agents, recognized in the top 1% of all Chicago area real estate agents for transactions closed from 2000 to 2018. We're talking almost 20 years. Currently serves as a member of the Milken University Board of Trustees as well as other national local boards, including Business, Real Estate, and Civic Matters. Real Estate Nation, Realtist Nation, I'd like to welcome Ronald Branch. Thank you very much for showing up today, Ronald Branch. This was short notice. He wasn't a scheduled guest, but when I found out that his schedule permitted for him to be here, I was super excited. You should be super excited. I don't know where to start. There's so many things that Realtors Nation can benefit from what you have to share. I just don't know where to begin, so I'll try to begin at the beginning. So there's 33 years of real estate experience. I have to ask you, with REO being your niche, let's start there. Let's talk about what REO actually is. What is REO?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Daryl, for the introduction, and it's an honor to be here with you. So I appreciate the opportunity to sit here and talk with you. REO stands for real estate owned. Real estate owned meaning that banks and corporations own real estate by default. When a mortgagor does not pay his or her mortgage, defaults on it, the property goes through foreclosure. The bank or corporation then takes ownership of that property after the foreclosure process is complete. Real estate owned means simply that piece of property that is owned by that bank or corporation that is held by them, owned by them, until they can resell it. So banks and corporations are not allowed to own real estate for an extended period of time. So it must get back to the market and get sold to an individual or a corporation or entity for the use of that real property.
Interesting. So does the bank have a real estate division where they employ brokers to do this sort of thing, or are they looking for hire individuals that will step in and represent the bank in these type of transactions? How does that work?
Well, normally the bank or corporation will have a department that is responsible for that process. It is the default property, the default department. It could be the REO department. It comes with different names. So brokers will then be hired by that entity within the locale that the properties are located, and are on an independent contractor basis with the client. So the properties are not normally sold by employees of the bank. Sometimes they will, but most banks and corporations will sell their properties via brokers who are in the open market.
So do these banking institutions have go-to brokers? If I'm a broker, so the question I'm really asking is, if I'm a broker and I want to break into this REO space, do I need to start building relationships with banks, or will banks come find me? Like, how do I get into this space?
Well, it's much more difficult and challenging now to get into that space than it once was. Before the REO crash, or the real estate crash of 10, 12 years ago, there were fewer real estate brokers in this particular lane. So when I first got into the business of REO 33 years ago, there weren't very many brokers in it. So it wasn't very difficult to obtain listings. Today's world, in today's marketplace, there are just thousands, literally thousands of real estate brokers who are now looking to do real estate owned properties, REO properties. The challenge is that there are not as many assets, as many properties on the market as there are brokers. So clients will limit the amount of real estate brokers that they hire to manage and sell the properties on their behalf. So we have many more real estate brokers, a lesser inventory of real properties to sell. So now the demand for REO brokers it's much more challenging to become a part of that arena.
Wow. So if I'm a real estate agent, trying to get into this space is tough. There's a lot of competition, I imagine. So when you create a relationship with this financial institution, is it transactional based, or am I not employed, but I guess partnered, right, with this financial institution just for this specific transaction? Or is there a contract where, hey, for a year you give me all of your real property to get sold? How does that work?
Well, it's a contract. It's a relationship between the client and my company, RLB Realty Group, or any other company that is in partnership with the client.
Okay.
There is not a specific amount of listings that a real estate broker will obtain in that contract period. The contract is primarily to determine from the client perspective if the broker is performing at a level that continues to receive assets to sell and market for them. The real estate broker, the contract is to assure that whatever the terms are between the client and the real estate broker are met. So there is no specific amount of properties that can be assigned to a real estate broker during that period of time, but based on performance and inventory within a given market, then that will determine how many listings of property, many listings a real estate broker will receive.
Understood. So I'm a real estate broker, and I deal mostly in residential real estate.
Right.
Right. And, our transactions are 30, 45, sometimes 60 days to close. And an REO, typically in an REO transaction, is there a average time that these things close?
It varies. Similar to the normal transaction between a private owner and a private seller, the transaction can be a cash deal, cash transaction, be more likely of a financing transaction, FHA, conventional financing, and so forth. The same thing can occur on the REO side. The properties that exist in the REO world are just as they are in the private sector. It could be one that you walk into and absolutely nothing needs to be done. You can just put your furniture and your clothes in the closet and you're living. And then there are others at the other extreme that require an absolute total renovation of the property because the property has been neglected. It could have been vandalized, because REO properties, more likely than not, the client wants that REO property to be vacant when it's sold. So depending upon the community that it's located in, depending upon the market, it could have some damage to it. And many times owners who lose properties via foreclosure may not have had the assets, the cash, the money to keep the property repaired and maintained. So many times the REO property has suffered some. So the transaction length varies based upon the type of transaction it is. So a cash transaction can close in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. A financing transaction, especially those that are acquisition rehab type of financing, could be 45, 60 days.
Got it. So when I'm on the listing side of a transaction, it's almost a guarantee that the buyer is looking to have my client fix something in a property. They don't like the way the plumbing is set up,
right,
the electrical. They want to see more outlets. It's a myriad of things that they may ask for in order to close this transaction.
Right.
Do you get those sort of requests from the type of buyers that are looking for an REO property?
It varies again, depending upon the condition of the property once it hits the market. So if it's a property that needs very little in terms of repairs or updating, then the corporate client, will probably repair based upon the appraisal.
Got it.
So if it's sold strictly as is, that's just it. As is, there will be no consideration or concessions given to a buyer for any type of repairs that are needed. So going into the property, a buyer must know that this is the type of property that they're looking to purchase. One that's either as is, or one that the corporate client will consider repairing.
So corporate clients do consider repairs
Absolutely.
at times.
Absolutely.
And do they, how often are you consulting the direction that corporate clients should go in based on that type of property, i.e., this is a property that has maybe some porch damage that will become an issue. Are they open to having you consult with them, give them direction on the best way to move that property?
Right. And that's done at the very beginning through our, what we call a BPO, the broker's price opinion. Within that report, within that analysis, we as real estate brokers will recommend the type of marketing that best suits that property in the condition that it's in the location that it sits in. Now, depending upon the client, we have different types of clients. Some clients will not do any type of work regardless of the condition. Others will look to increase home ownership by having the property be repaired to the level of FHA standards or conventional standards where a homeowner can seek financing to purchase that type of home.
Understood. Can we talk about CMAs, right? CMA, a comparative market analysis, for those that aren't familiar with that. I do that in order to ensure that if I'm on the listing side, that we're listing for the right price. If I'm on the buying side, that we're purchasing this property at the right price. Is the CMA, because you've had experience in both residential and REO, clearly more REO than residential, but when it comes to CMAs, where are you pulling properties from? Because I imagine with this being a corporate sale, are you only comparing it to other corporate sales, or are you comparing it to all sales?
Well, that's a very good question. Now, CMA and BPO are many times used interchangeably. So the data that you use for your CMA will be the same data that I use for the REO client and the BPO. Because if you look at the data within the MLS, which is historical data for sold properties and active properties that are currently on the market that are similar to the subject, it's going to be information that I will use. Now, the difference will be that in an analysis for a corporate client, very similar to what an appraiser does, we will make adjustments based upon different aspects of that property, whether it be the room count, the location, the exact location of it, the amenities within the house. So what we're looking to do is to try to compare what we call the comp to the subject to make them as equal as possible based upon the adjustments that we make to the comp properties. So we're always looking to try to find the best matches that we can for a particular subject property, and that may entail having to use these adjustments to equalize those two properties that you're looking at. So it's the same data, the same properties that you'll see in the MLS. We just use it a little differently.
Just use it a little differently.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to switch speeds.
Yep.
And selfishly so. I am a Dearborn Realtist member. I am a proud Dearborn Realtist member. One of my first experiences as a Dearborn Realtist member was being introduced to you. and I just consider you to be walking wisdom. And you are one of the major reasons that I continue to ensure that I'm current with my dues every year to remain a Realtist member. I'd like to ask you briefly, if you could, how were you introduced to the Dearborn Realtist Board organization?
I'm a proud realtist and a black man who believes that every black American should have an opportunity to own real property just like any other American. So when I first entered the business, the real estate business in 1986,
Not that long ago.
not too long
Not
ago,
that long ago.
I was working in a corporate position, and after college in '81, graduated college in '81, and I worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies in 5 years.
Wow.
That glass ceiling knocked the you-know-what out of me. So I was looking for something within those companies that just wasn't there for a black man. So as I entered into the real estate profession, understanding a little bit about our communities, the black community, I took note of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which is listed in real estate transaction book in terms of getting your license, but it's only a paragraph or two.
Really?
Along with the National Association of Realtors. I wanted to find out the difference between the two. So the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, of course, is the oldest and largest minority real estate trade association in the world. And being introduced to it just in the book had me find out where is the real organizational piece in Chicago.
Right.
The first broker that I worked with was members of both NARAB, the Dearborn Real Estate Board at that time, and the Chicago Association of Realtors, and introduced me to both. My commitment to the community led me down the Dearborn Realtist Board path in 1986 because of who we are and who we were. At that point in '86, I had the pleasure of meeting some of the stalwarts that helped open up the doors for home ownership for black Chicagoans. They were still with us at that time. You know, so you, and I'm always flattered by how you refer to me, but those brothers and sisters are the ones who helped bring down the walls of restrictive covenants and the legal boundaries that we could only live in prior to the 80s and 70s. And that was a Dearborn Real Estate Board at that time, and that's what led me to it.
That's a great segue. And I just want our viewers to know that having been president of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers and still a remaining member, you're still on the front line. You're still fighting for democracy and housing for people of color. And I just think that's admirable and it's inspirational. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you on behalf of Realtist Nation for your continued efforts to ensure that we have equal opportunity at housing.
Thank you.
With that being said, you were just recently on the front line last week, I believe. Talk to me a little bit about what happened last week. Where were you last week? I hear it was a big event for African Americans in this country. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened last week?
We were in Washington, D.C. I was in Washington, D.C. as a part of Realtist Nation, and we attended the annual convention of the of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Okay.
It is a annual convention of our legislators. Right now there are 55 legislators, black legislators in the Senate and the Congress who work every year, every day on behalf of the 82 plus million black Americans in the country. So this conference has all of our congressional leaders who have brain trust seminars, forums on every aspect of black America. So every topic that you can think of was discussed at the CBC convention. One of those being, of course, real estate and housing. So the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, as a partner of the Congressional Black Caucus, and this is a partnership that we've been building since I was president and before I was president, quite frankly. And it has grown to the point now where we are considered, I'm talking about NARAB, N-A-R-A-B, is considered the partner who is the spokesperson for America as it relates to black housing.
Wow.
So within NARAB, we created the State of Housing in Black America report, which we held a brain trust forum on that. It was absolutely packed, Daryl. We had probably close to 1,000 attendees.
Amazing.
Angela Rye from CNN was our moderator. And we had two panels that discussed not only the state of housing in Black America, but also some young folks your age and less who have been in entertainment. Waka Flocka Flame.
Perfect.
That young brother is
Perfect.
That young brother is impressive.
I think he might record that and use that in one of his next records, the way you said that.
And absolutely inspirational to young black men and women about his road toward home ownership, owning real estate, and investing.
Okay.
Such a message. Bobby Simmons, another young brother who played 12 years in the NBA, was on our panel as well, discussing about some of the investments that he did. So the Congressional Black Caucus Conference, as I mentioned, had every single topic that you could even think of that you may have an interest in, and there would be experts discussing all of these topics. Not only was it educational, but we had a lot of fun.
Did you have some fun?
It was some social activities here and there.
It was some social activity?
So the Congress people, they host receptions in the evening.
Okay.
So invite those from their districts and their states. But then as a national organization, we participated in receptions for everyone.
The state of black home ownership in America is in crisis. We are showing some of the lowest numbers that we have in quite some time. Were there any discussions around that? And if so, what were some of the takeaways from those discussions about solutions to this crisis that we're facing? And I don't use that word lightly. It is a crisis. Home ownership is synonymous with wealth. And to not play a role in America's home ownership budget line, if you will, is a crisis for our people. What were some of the things that you spoke about or were spoken about during that time?
Right. And it is absolutely a crisis. The home is the financial cornerstone for you, me, our families, and for those in the future. Our level of home ownership in the black community is less today than it was 50 years ago when the Fair Housing Act was passed.
Wow.
So we've actually lost in terms of home ownership and the ability to create wealth for ourselves and our families by not being able to own real property. Some of the solutions are just getting back to the basics, understanding the process of purchasing a home, the myths behind it that are unreal that we have to break down. So the Dearborn Realtist Board, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, are involved in a number of initiatives to help black Americans understand how easy it can be to purchase a home, but we must also have our financial situations in line to be able to do so.
I want to continue this for at least 2 to 3 hours, but unfortunately we have to wrap up. It was amazing having you as a guest. We're definitely bringing you back. Realtist Nation, thank you for tuning in. You will see Mr. Ronald Branch again. There will be a part 2 to this. The best estate is real estate. I'll see you next time.